People who have spent years trading a business and never making a cent out of it for themselves. You probably built it up from just you, and next thing you know, you've got 7 or 8 employees, 2 officers, you've got leased equipment, you've issued personal guarantees on finances. It's now connected to your ability to pay your kids' school fees and the mortgage on the house. And so the business failure actually means that if you don't take the right steps at the right time, not only does the business fail, but you can lose your home. My name's Liam Bailey. I'm the managing partner of O'Brien Palmer. I think if you ever found somebody that wanted to be a liquidator as they were coming through school, you should probably run away from that person. But nonetheless, I was going to be a lawyer, and I took a job for a while with a startup insolvency firm and found that I really enjoyed the challenges of it, because the role is part legal, part accounting, part business, part project management. There's no long repetitive tasks. It's always different. And I found the ability to work with people and helping them in some really stressful times of their life to be quite rewarding, but also the work to be quite challenging and interesting. People who find themselves in financial difficulty will first and foremost usually try to find some answers that doesn't require them to go and talk to people about their problems. Mostly, I think it's got to do a lot with the idea of the shame, business failure and financial difficulties, and especially in small businesses. People who own their own businesses and run their own businesses have usually set them up. They are invested in those businesses through blood, sweat and tears. And the concept that that business might be failing isn't just a failure of the business. In a lot of directors' minds is the concept of it being a personal failure on their behalf. Even if the circumstances that have led to the financial difficulty are completely beyond their control, they still feel that it is, tied to their identity. And so too often people don't reach out and ask for help until it's too late,
Right.
because it's awkward or embarrassing to admit that they could use some help. The entire insolvency system is first and foremost designed around saving businesses. Now, I know that that can seem quite trite, but the earlier that you reach out and seek help usually means that you've got more resources still available. You haven't burned off your business. You haven't burned off the goodwill with your employees or your suppliers or your customers. You've got some money still in the bank, and those resources can be used to turn a business around and save it. Unfortunately, by the time someone's filing a wind-up application against you in court, usually you've missed a lot of the opportunities along the way, and a lot of those businesses are much harder to save because we've got less resources available to work out a solution. So early intervention and reaching out for help early is one of the best ways of ensuring that a turnaround strategy is successful. I think there's a misconception that still exists amongst business owners about what being solvent is and where the risk line sort of comes into play. Solvency is a function of your ability to pay your creditors as and when debts become due and payable. Now, that's really important. That's a cash flow test. So when you owe money to people, you have a particular due date. If you're not making the payments or can't make those payments by the time those due dates are coming up, you are insolvent, even if on paper you've got enough assets to pay out those debts. Balance sheet insolvency isn't the test of insolvency. It's not just to have enough assets to meet your liabilities, but it's an ability to use those assets to pay debts on time. If your aged creditors are starting to blow out, if you have more than 30 or 40% of your creditors are not being paid within terms, you have a very significant solvency issue that needs to be confronted. If you are falling behind on your payments to the tax office for things like PAYG or GST, or if you're not keeping up to date with your superannuation, that is a very serious sign that your business is insolvent. If you are maxing out your available credit, that's a very serious sign that your company is insolvent. Bookkeepers and accountants often find themselves being uniquely placed because they look at numbers. In that respect, numbers are, to a certain degree, not emotional. They're not imbued with hope that things are going to get better or the expectation that things are going to get better. They just tell a very blunt story. Either you are or you are not insolvent on the numbers, regardless of the overall context. And that's why bookkeepers and accountants are uniquely placed to give business owners really helpful and critical advice about the health of their businesses. The number of business owners that have found themselves here talking to me and they say, oh, well, I knew that if this payment came in, I'd have enough money to pay all my creditors. And so I thought it was all going to be okay because that money was going to come in. But then all of a sudden, that person didn't pay me. And the house of cards on which everything was resting comes crashing down because of a missed payment from a customer. I think it is also the idea of, what would you do if the business failed? People have been working in their businesses for a really long time. And if they all of a sudden had to wind up their businesses, what would they do? They have to go and potentially get a job working for somebody else. They might need to start again from scratch. There might be some significant consequences in their personal financial situation to do with finance for mortgages or lease vehicles where they have to look at a new reality and confront that situations. And sometimes that is all just too hard and too much to deal with. But I try and tell people who do run their businesses to look at it objectively. If your business can't afford to pay its creditors, then it can't afford to pay you. And are you really going to continue working in a business that can't afford to pay you? Accountants can, from time to time, be unwilling to challenge the opinions of their clients. If you're going to tell one of your clients that they are at risk of trading whilst insolvent, you risk alienating somebody that doesn't want to hear the bad news and someone who might want to take their business elsewhere rather than continue with you. If accountants were able to have a frank and honest communications with their clients, they would be integral in saving businesses as opposed to watching them as they slide into liquidation and ceasing to exist. If you have a regular conversation and a regular communication with your accountants, and your accountants are more than just somebody who is filling out your BASs and submitting them on your behalf, but they are advisors, and you have some respect for the fact that these are people who have studied and worked in businesses for a long period of time, and they do provide a valuable service to making sure that your business is run efficiently and complies with all the regulations, but also that you are trading in a manner that avoids personal exposure for things like director penalty notices, insolvent trading, help you structure your business and structure your assets in a way that protects them to the maximum extent possible. They are a real value add to a business. And unfortunately, when directors find themselves struggling financially, quite often one of the first things that they do is terminate or reduce the amount of advice and financial assistance that they're obtaining from their financial advisors or business advisors and accountants at a time where that advice is more critical than ever. So businesses that don't have proper records, one thing that probably is really worth taking a moment to stop and acknowledge is a director of a company has an obligation under the Corporations Act to make sure that the company maintains sufficient records to, and I'll quote the act here, to properly record all of its transactions and to allow the financial accounts prepared to be audited, independently audited. In circumstances where your company goes into liquidation and you haven't maintained those proper records, your company is presumed insolvent during that period. And a liquidator can bring a claim against you for insolvent trading or any debts incurred in a period where the company failed to maintain proper books and records. And so it's the presumption of insolvency in circumstances where there aren't records is a major area of exposure. And lots of directors think that, oh, well, I have accountants, that's on them. And it's not. You as the director have the responsibility to make sure that your accountants and bookkeepers are doing the job required because you're the one with the positive legal duty. Now, the other thing that we've seen over the last decade is that as we get greater reliance on electronic accounting packages and online accounting packages like Xero and MYOB Online, is that if you maintain those sorts of electronic accounts, that's enough. But that is also not correct. Each of the transactions recorded in those electronic accounts needs a verifiable document or business record in support of it, so that when a liquidator is appointed to the company, they can look at it and understand why that transaction was recorded in the account. To a certain extent, I think a lot of accountants think that as long as once a year they get the declaration from the owner of the business in their capacity as a director, I think you're preparing financial accounts for the business. You have enough information to very quickly run a pre-insolvency or a solvency health check on your client's businesses based on the financial accounts that they give you every year. And if it ticks off a couple of the boxes where there are some warning signs of insolvency, keep a file note of the conversation that you had with the client that says, we've identified some things that we think you need to be aware of as potential risk of insolvency, and we would like to have that conversation with you. If the director says, or the business owner says, thanks, but no thanks, well, you've brought it to their attention and they have declined to take you up on the opportunity for a further discussion. Business owners make a lot of assumptions about things based on optimism, based on desperation, based on a whole bunch of emotional factors. But a good business owner should sit down at least annually, but probably quarterly, and prepare some forward cash flow projections to make sure that their business is going to generate enough money to pay all of its debts, as well as being able to pay you a return for the time that you're investing in the business. Again, a business owner that keeps something like that on file is helping to protect themselves from the idea that they negligently traded the business insolvent, because they can say, we sat down and we planned it and we were satisfied that before incurring the debts that we were going to have enough money to pay those debts. I think if you can have a conversation with business owners about, is this business generating enough money to pay you what you need it to make it a worthwhile endeavor and a worthwhile use of your time, then you're not going to have people spending years, and I have seen this, people who have spent years trading a business and never making a cent out of it for themselves. You probably built it up from just you, and next thing you know, you've got 7 or 8 employees, 2 officers, you've got leased equipment, you've issued personal guarantees on finances, it's now connected to your ability to pay your kids' school fees and the mortgage on the house. And if you don't stay on top of these things, when the business fails, so many things fall off the radar as well. Like, you no longer can afford your finance, or the business finance might be cross-collateralized against the mortgage on your home. And so the business failure actually means that if you don't take the right steps at the right time, not only does the business fail, but you can lose your home. Nobody wants to find themselves needing to have a conversation with a liquidator or, God forbid, a bankruptcy trustee. So I'm very aware that the people that I'm talking to are going through some of the most stressful times of their lives for themselves, and because of the potential impact on their families. I have a regular blog making videos about topics of business owners and individuals who are facing financial uncertainty or financial stress. And you can follow us on social media. We're putting a lot of videos out. But at the end of the day, pick up the phone and call us. Very happy to spend some time just having a chat with you about your circumstances. Maybe we can help you through a formal insolvency appointment for restructuring. Maybe we can informally assist you, or maybe I can just put you in contact with the right people who can assist you with negotiating with the tax office in respect of a director penalty notice. And I'm very happy to take some time and have a chat with you. And if I can't help you, help put you in contact with the people that can.